What you're about to see are two possible futures for Legacy.
Next on Eternal Durdles.
This episode is supported by our Durdle Maniacs, who enjoy ad-free content as well as bonus content that can be found either on Patreon, Spotify, or YouTube. If you're thinking about supporting the show, we'd really appreciate it, and you can find us on any of those mediums. What it do? Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Bleckman. Phil, how's it going, man?
So Zach told me not to talk about Sensei's Divining Top this episode, so we're not going to do that.
Well, I mean, as a creature, as like maybe an otter, or like a lizard or a frog, sure. But what we want to do here, so I have chosen a specific possible future for a band announcement in August, and then we have what we think is probably the most likely future, and then Phil is actually going to send me his future. Phil's future is going to be a listener exclusive on the Patreon, so if you're interested in seeing what Phil's future is that doesn't include Sensei's Dividing Top, you can subscribe to our Patreon and check that out as well. But what we've got here is a little filler. This is just a kind of a fun episode where I have created two band announcements, and we kind of talk about what happens with these two possible band announcements. So it's like I said, this is completely fictional. This did not actually happen. What I'm about to read to you is going to sound very real. But don't spread lies on the internet about what's going to be happening here. Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield. Moxfield is the best Magic the Gathering deck building website on the internet. You can create, share, and find decks from Commander to Legacy and even fan-supported formats like Pre-Modern and Old School. You can see all of our decks on our Moxfield. Follow the links below to stay tuned. All right, so my announcement is as follows. Phil, we're going to have you react to it. All right, here we go. Phil, they finally did it. This is the ban announcement for the August ban and restricted list for Legacy. I'm just going to read it out to you, and I want you to react to it with me in real time here. Grief is banned. Entomb is banned. Orcish Bowmaster is banned. Up the Beanstalk is banned. All right, and here is the announcement. In recent months, these cards have contributed to strategies that are overly dominant and reduce the diversity of the Legacy format. Our primary goal is to foster a dynamic metagame where a wide variety of decks can compete and thrive. Grief has proven to be an excessively powerful enabler in multiple archetypes, allowing for disruptive plays that are difficult to recover from, particularly in combination with reanimation targets. Its presence has led to an unhealthy imbalance, and we believe banning it will help restore competitive diversity. Entomb has long been a staple in various graveyard-based strategies, but its efficiency and the power level of targets it enables have continued to grow. With the addition of newer, more potent reanimation targets, Entomb has pushed these strategies to an untenable level. Banning Entomb is a step towards mitigating the dominance of graveyard-centric decks. Orcish Bowmasters has rapidly become a ubiquitous threat across multiple archetypes, offering both disruption and a powerful clock in one card. Its versatility and efficiency have made it a staple in too many top-tier decks, stifling innovation and diversity. By banning Orcish Bowmasters, we aim to open up the metagame and encourage a broader range of strategies. Up the Beanstalk has enabled explosive and consistent draw engines that have proven difficult to interact with. Its ability to fuel where are we at here? Its ability to fuel a variety of control decks and mid-range decks has pushed it beyond a healthy power level for Legacy. Removing Up the Beanstalk from the format will help curb these strategies and promote a more interactive, balanced play environment. We recognize that these changes may have significant impacts on the current metagame, but we believe they are necessary to maintain the long-term health of Legacy. We will continue to monitor the format closely to make adjustments as needed to ensure it remains dynamic and enjoyable for all players. It's been exciting to see the development of new archetypes and evolutions of the existing ones, including the rise of decks like the new Eldrazi deck and the Nadu deck, as well as Death and Taxes and Reanimator. Sorry, ChatGPT wrote a lot of this. We look forward to seeing how the metagame adapts and what innovative strategies emerge in the wake of these changes. Thank you for your continued passion and support for Magic the Gathering. Happy brewing, and we look forward to seeing you at Eternal Weekend. Phil, what's your takeaway here? Banning Grief, Entomb, Orcish Bowmasters, and Up the Beanstalk. Uh-oh. Do we not have a Phil?
I think that this is the reality that we would like to live in, and I actually don't think that they went far enough. I think Urza Saga and Days should have also joined them on the ban list, but let's get into what they actually did do. Everybody agrees Grief needed to go. One thing that I think that isn't talked about enough regarding Grief and its need to not exist anymore is the fact that you get not only to strip the cards at card parity and have an evasive threat on the table before your opponent gets to take a game action, but the information that is given for 0 mana is also something that we have only ever seen broken before. Now, it doesn't necessarily...
Broken with what card? Specifically, another free card.
Yeah, it's not often that Grief and Gitaxian Probe are related to each other, but I think that the free information, being able to dictate a game that isn't going to last for very many turns, just is such a lopsided advantage at no cost that it actually is, just in the aggregate, an effect that is too powerful at no mana. If you have that effect at Thoughtseize and other discard spells to get that information, but that's your turn. But the fact that you can get free information and then also be able to play your turn around that free information is actually too good when the power level of the format is where it's at. So it's not talked about enough because the gameplay is usually just like, okay, we both mulligan a bunch, but you have the upper hand. But it's not only we mulligan a bunch down to nothing and that player has the upper hand. They also have perfect information. And they have perfect information that is unlikely to change because they stripped all of the things that would otherwise have changed it. So I don't think we need to argue or debate whether or not Grief needed to go. I think everybody's happy to see it gone. Now, I'm happy that they had the foresight to get rid of Bowmasters, because before, when everybody was playing with Bowmasters and it was eclipsed 40% of the metagame, which is more than enough that got Deathrite Shaman banned, if we recall. But Orcish Bowmaster eclipsed 40% and it was only trending upward. And then once people got the Bowmaster on Bowmaster out of their system to a degree, then Scam started to reveal itself as the best deck, and people started refining that archetype. And then Bowmaster fell off once the format was so inbred and needed to beat Scam mirrors. Orcish Bowmaster was soft in the Scam mirrors. And so because of that, Bowmaster's trajectory went down. But it didn't go down for anything other than the fact that Scam was...
It was not great against the best deck that was also playing it.
It was not great against the best deck, and then the best deck got an additional upgrade in Psychic Frog, and I've noticed that Psychic Frog has been taking a lot of heat as a card that should be considered for the ban list ever since its printing in Modern Horizons 3, because it's propped up the best deck. But I think that if we were to look at the means for answering Frog are aplenty. Before, I get that there's always going to be the snowbally threats that are protected by counter magic, but if we just think about what the cards do in the aggregate, if you put a frog on the table, even though it does a lot of things and it's going to control a lot of parts of the board, both in combat, and it's a snowbally threat that can run away with the game, and that changes based on the deck that it's playing against. The fact that you actually do need to untap and connect on, and it's not a single mana threat, so it's not like it's backed up by Days on turn 1 the way Ragavan was. Yeah. The idea that yes, it does, yes, maybe Bolt is not in its heyday, and for the first time ever, people would consider playing less than 4 Bolt because Psychic Frog exists. But the fact that you get to untap against a Psychic Frog and interact with it before it actually accrues the advantage that it otherwise would accrue, I think means that it's actually a healthier card, and one of the maybe not as healthy in terms of what it is promoting, which is a best deck that is being propped up by all these other things. But I don't think that it's in the same space of degenerate card that's too powerful. It's similar in I don't want to draw too up cards, but I think Psychic Frog is getting a lot of heat just because it's the new card that's in the top deck. But if Grief went and not Bowmaster, I think Bowmaster would prop up and then just annihilate a bunch of things that would otherwise get to see play, but Bowmaster can't. The joke with Bowmaster was always like, oh, does that have one toughness? It's unplayable in this format, right? Like Bowmaster just obsoleting those kinds of cards. Like think back to Ren and 6. We've had this conversation before, but even if it wasn't just the deal of damage and eliminate X ones from the format other than itself, and the best answer to a Bowmaster is a Bowmaster, which only inbreeds it being ubiquitous. The other thing that it prompts that, like, if we just think about how insane of a raid it is, if you catch a single cantrip, right, one draw, one
that's
additional
9
draw,
damage. That's 9 damage immediately
from anything. Like
a brainstorm is 9 damage. Sorry.
If I crack a clue, right? If I just incidentally crack a clue to draw one card, a Bowmaster deals 5 damage.
Yeah.
Right. It's the initial ping. It's
damage
the 3 on the
body
ping,
and the extra. Yeah.
And the extra ping on the draw. Now, I don't think that you should get 2 mana splashable at a rate that's oppressing a bunch of cards out of the format, and then also get better than a Flame Rift off a single card draw.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you catch the Brainstorm and go berserk, cool. You caught Brainstorm, sure. But like catching literally any cantrip and that just translates to 5 damage, if not contended with immediately, is way too steep. That's just like unacceptable of a rate, regardless of anything else. Like Bowmaster, in my view, is a mistake. I get that people want ways to punish cantrips. If we all agree that there should be more punishment for cantrips that outside of literally all of the cards that exist in the format right now that have punished cantrips before, whether that's Leovold or Spirit of the Labyrinth or Chalice of the Void, making sure that you can't cast your stuff anyway, or Thalia taxing those cantrips and making it so that they're at a rate that isn't playable. Aside from all that, like if none of that stuff is good enough anymore, I think it's okay for WotC to print stuff that taxes or punishes cantrips, but not at this rate. I think Bowmaster
is a bit over the top. Yeah,
it's over the top. So I think it's okay that Bowmaster goes. I'm happy to see it go. Nobody should lose sleep over it.
Well, let's move on to Entomb, because Entomb is kind of a dark horse pick, huh?
Well, I remember people talking about Entomb getting banned because it had been previously banned, so it's not unprecedented for it to be banned. I think that honestly, I think that Reanimate probably should have been the card to go, because Entomb does do things. Like I get that. Obviously, it's a mainstay in Reanimator, and that's like primarily where you find it. But there is some amount of brewing interest that Entomb can enable by like dumping Echo Vions on the board into the yard, or dumping Life from the Loam into the yard, or there are other things that like you can do that Reanimate really just can't do. Because if you were trying to do something like, oh, but Phil, you could reanimate like cheaper creatures too. It's not always just Atraxa and Grizzlebrand that get put into play. Well, it's like you have Unearth for that, right? Like you have other single band of spells. You have alternatives to do that kind of gameplay, but that's just not the kind of gameplay that Reanimate's promoting. So Reanimate is the only thing that it does for the rate that it does it, where you have Animate Dead and Exhume, and like if you moved you can put whatever you want into play with no additional cost at just like if 2 mana is the minimum, because Reanimate is the only effect in the game that otherwise does it at 1, then I think it's okay to be like, this is the bar for acceptable power level and legacy of a reanimation effect with no other downside. Because like the cost of life in Reanimate is fine if you can like check their life total before they can get off, but the reanimation decks are putting it into play on turn 1 and turn 2, and the card advantage that they accrue from putting that fatty into play is insurmountable. It doesn't matter the amount of life that you lost.
Yeah, I think my take on the Entomb banning is that, like, it's what we were saying before about a lot of other cards during our Big Damn Unban episode at the beginning of the year. This card doesn't do anything that isn't already, like, banning it or unbanning it, whatever. Really, my take is, like, it's not doing anything interesting. Like, we know what you're going to do, Oh, you're putting Echo Vions in your graveyard? I'm not surprised, like, it doesn't make the format more interesting is what I'm saying. So I'm not sad to see it go either. What do you think about Up the Beanstalk?
I think I'm surprised that they banned Up the Beanstalk. Don't get me wrong. I think it's the correct call.
Right? Yeah.
I think it's the correct call to be more aggressive with banning those types of engines. I get that they have banned it in Modern, and that there's clearly, even though they haven't directly said anything about how they're trying to change the identities of the format differently, so that way Modern isn't just Diet Legacy. So you see things like Ren and 6 and Ragavan and Expressive Iteration are all legal in Legacy, and Underworld Breach is legal in Modern. They're all legal in Modern where they're not legal in Legacy. Where then Up the Beanstalk is banned in Modern, but it's legal in Legacy. And so they're trying to differentiate these formats enough by the different tools, essentially by curating their respective ban lists, because all of these cards you could argue in either format are too good and should all go. But they did, like, Up the Beanstalk was too good in Modern, and I would argue that it is also too good for Legacy. Not in that, like, okay, yes,
Well,
you can check the Beanstalk. Like, the Beanstalk decks aren't like all agreed upon on what necessarily the best version is. The best version of the Beanstalk decks are the Days Wasteland versions. Like, you look at results, like, that's just uncontested. Like, you do have some amount of like your Leyline Guild Pack style Beanstalk decks that do put up results, but like those fall more into the camp of, oh, those are the outlier decks that make the top eights, not like the expected contenders in the top eights. Where like Sultai Beanstalk of playing Days Wasteland would be an expected contender. I think that like what Up the Beanstalk does is similar to other cards that just compress the aggro combo control trifecta of what would make for a healthy metagame, and throw mid-range in there. One thing that Up the Beanstalk does is it means that you can't play a control deck otherwise without Up the Beanstalk. Like, it compels you to play this card if you want to play anything that's revolving around this entire macro type that builds a format.
Well, I think something that wasn't included in this write-up as well is that, like, this would be the next deck to go to. Like, this would be the next best deck, right? They're knocking down the top two decks immediately. They're like, okay, no more Scam, no more Beanstalk control, right? Figure something else out. We're playing in a new metagame.
I actually disagree. I think that, like,
Delver, yeah.
Well, I mean, you could argue that it would be the next best deck. It would be one of the next best decks. The card that is like conspicuously absent to me. I get, like, we're not going to get into Days. I get that it's a like format identity card. Like, we're never getting rid of it. Whatever, I'll get off of it. But like, the world needs to take a look at Urza Saga. Like, Urza Saga is definitively an individual pillar of the format, and it not being mentioned at all.
Not even mentioned.
Okay, like, you want to leave it in Modern? You want to leave it in Modern and differentiate the formats? Okay, sure, fine, leave it in Modern. But like, it is way too good in Legacy. Like, I've mentioned this before, and we did it in our debate. But every Urza Saga deck is facading that it's something else, right? Every Urza Saga deck is an Urza Saga deck first, and then it's whatever it's doing after. Urza Saga is always the primary thing that it's doing because it's more powerful than anything else going on. But it's like, oh, it's in the Painter decks, but like, Painter's the one that's getting the headline. So it's the Painter combo. No, it's not. It's an Urza Saga beatdown deck that just happens to have a combo finish that it can 2-4 because it's incidental, because Urza Saga puts it on the table for free. Urza Saga is way too good. Way too good. And the fact that it wasn't mentioned at all amongst these cards, like, these cards going, the next best thing is just Urza Saga. Just play Urza Saga. It's unbelievable to me that they didn't even mention it.
Crazy. It's like some AI wrote this announcement or something.
Even furthermore, let's hypothetically say that AI did write this thing, right?
Yeah.
If AI did write this thing, AI is scraping from what's written on the internet in order to, like, produce its voice, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if it's doing that and it's scraping from the internet and then didn't even mention Urza Saga, then that means that there isn't enough on the internet for the AI to even pull from. That's mind-boggling to me, fam. What are we doing as a community to be like, yeah, Urza Saga is totally fine? Like, again, if you play with Urza Saga and you have results of Urza Saga and you don't want to see it go, sure. But like, we have to all agree that, like, I mean, if it were printed in the time of Tolarian Academy, Mishra's Workshop, or Bazaar of Baghdad, it would just be in the echelon of those best lands ever, and it would not even. It would be like not even rational to think about it. It is getting modern day design bias for sure. If that thing were printed in 2002, everybody would have lost their shit and been like, "This is so unbelievably powerful. It's got to go immediately." It would have been banned for 20 years.
All right. Back to reality. So that was one possible reality of a ban list announcement, right? That is I would say that is the 10% bracket of, like, they went crazy and, like, decided that they were going to make a statement about the whole format, right? What's more likely is this next scenario, Phil. So here we go. Phil, they finally did it. We have a ban announcement for Legacy just coming in so that it's all in time for Eternal Weekend. Here's the announcement. Legacy. Grief is banned. Hard stop. No other bans. Grief has consistently proven to be an excessively powerful enabler in multiple archetypes, particularly in combination with reanimator strategies. Its ability to disrupt opponents' plans early in the game has led to an unhealthy imbalance in the Legacy format. By banning Grief, we aim to restore competitive diversity and create more enjoyable experience for all players. We also want to address the community's concerns regarding the impact of Orcish Bowmasters and Up the Beanstalk in the Legacy format. While these cards were not being banned at this time, we acknowledge that they are on the edge of becoming problematic, and the team is closely monitoring their performance and influence on the metagame. Should further data and community feedback indicate that these cards are having a detrimental effect on the format, we will not hesitate to take additional action. Our primary goal is to foster a dynamic metagame, and while there is a wide variety of decks that can compete where there is a wide variety of decks that can compete and thrive, we recognize the challenges in maintaining a balanced format and appreciate your patience and understanding as we work to keep Legacy healthy and vibrant. It's been exciting to see the development of new archetypes and evolutions of existing ones. We look forward to seeing how the metagame adapts and what innovative strategies emerge during Eternal Weekend this year. Thank you for your continued passion and support for Magic the Gathering. Happy brewing, and have a good one. The Magic the Gathering team. What do you think of this? They just mentioned those other two cards. No mention of Entomb at all. Do you think this is a more likely scenario?
I do think this is a more likely scenario. I think that they're going to play extremely conservative. They have shown that they are willing to take hammers to younger formats. They've done it in Standard before, but they haven't done it in Legacy. So it would be a paradigm shift if they did that. I think it would be a whole new precedent. I think this is more likely what we're going to see is they're just going to give the community what they've been asking for months too late, and that's going to be it. And we're all going to be dissatisfied because even though they did give us what we want, they didn't go far enough because now we know the format that we're going to go into for Eternal Weekend, and it's just going to be a lot of what we have been displeased with before.
More of the same, yeah. I think in these two scenarios, we look at the first scenario. Is it Delver? Is it X Delver? Is the way to go, right? You play your Necrogoyf or whatever, Nethergoyf in Grixis, or you play the questing druid in green. And the go-to deck feels like in a scenario where you take out Beanstalk and you take out Grief, you just play Delver, right? Here, I think, I mean, I'm obviously going to continue playing Up the Beanstalk if they don't ban it, right? So I go with Up the Beanstalk. I'm sure you'll go with Miracles, but what do you think the best deck is in a scenario where they just ban Grief?
The best deck, I think, is just Grixis Delver again. We just go back to, or there's another deck that has been propping up that I think is going to see a bunch of play too, which is because Psychic Frog is now exists in the format, and part of that means that Lightning Bolt has gotten worse. People have actively started cutting the number of Lightning Bolts, or at least discussing how many Lightning Bolts they should cut if they should play it at all, because it can't beat Psychic Frog. That I actually
Death Shadow.
So you could play some variation of Death Shadow. What I actually think is if you go and look at what players have been playing with, experimenting, is essentially Blue-Black Canadian Threshold. Because there's now a Canadian Thresh deck that if you were to just look at you could just do two side-by-sides. Canadian Thresh of how we knew it between Tarmogoyf and Mongoose. Now it's the exact same spell suite, right? Yeah. Days Wasteland, all of the same spells, except the threats have upgraded. So now your Tarmogoyfs, instead of costing 2, cost 1 and are recursive. You have Murktide Regent and Psychic Frog.
Murktide Regent is your new Tarmogoyf.
So you just played all of the push blue-black cards that they've given you over time, and you just compress it into the Delver shell, and now this is the best deck. Like that and or Grixis Delver splashing for effectively Dragon Rage Channeler and like Pyroblast and like Molten Collapse and things like that as a ways to deal with Murktide and Psychic Frog. That will de facto for sure be the best deck, and it won't be close. And it's unfortunate because we've seen that play pattern a bunch of Days Wasteland just propping to the top. It will continue to be at the top because we didn't actually do anything to check that play pattern. So here we are.
All right. Well, so that is two possible futures, right? You have the and in both futures, it looks like Delver is still the best the deck to play. Like if you were to choose a deck to do well with at Eternal Weekend in either one of these scenarios, Delver seems like the way to go, or some variation of that tempo style deck. What do you think? In the comments, what do you think will actually get banned versus what do you want to get banned? Right? We're coming up. It's what, 2 weeks away until this announcement. It's almost like Christmas. Like I'm having trouble sleeping. I think it'll be interesting to see what actually happens, and if they squandered this summer and only ban Grief, that's going to be a bit disappointing. But if they do something a little further, maybe even some unbans, right? Maybe Earthcraft gets unbanned finally, right? Shout outs to Dula. Maybe they unban Earthcraft. Maybe they unban Mana Drain. Something on that level. It'd be interesting to see them do something that shakes the format up more than just like, yeah, this is a problem. Here's another patch that we put over the format for like a couple of days, until someone figures out the next thing that everyone's going to move to. Because now it just seems like 51% of the meta is just whatever the best deck is now. Like everyone's just like, I'm just going to shuffle up to the next best deck. So I'd like to see something a little more than that. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I think Days Wasteland is just going to be the best thing as it's always been.
Yeah.
I think that like we're just going to we've already crossed the paradigm. I think we need to there needs to be an actual foundational change, like a structural change, because this will just be the same pattern that it's been. And if they don't acknowledge it or take action against it, then we run into the same problem over and over and over again. And we're only going to run into the same problem over and over and over again, but in a way that is steeper. It's going to be exacerbated because each iteration that they print something new that's more powerful, it's more powerful than the previous thing. And so it's going to be felt harder and harder every time. So either they change the foundation and actually shake up the structure, or we just keep running into this and then we lose players over it.
I agree. I think that if you're going to, if you're going to just continue to put Band-Aids on, we're going to end up losing a lot of players. So I think one of these scenarios feels certainly better than the other one to me. But in the extra show, in the extra Durdles show, we will be going over one more, the one that Phil has chosen as his preferred future. So we'll check that out. If anybody wants to check that out, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. And again, please do not tell people that this is what happened or that we lied to everybody and said this is what it is. This is just a fun alternate future kind of thing. Maybe some guesses, possible predictions, but this is not real. These are not real things. And to that end, like I said, this is just a have fun during the downtime episode. Anyhow, thank you everyone for watching, and we will catch you soon. Thanks. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribing to this channel goes a long way to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And if you're listening on an audio format, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. Thanks so much for watching.